This true-life story will go down in Kenya as one of the most disgraceful failure of an African mother. The chaotic life of Ruth Akinyi and the death of a younger man entangled in a web of love that tarnished the image of a former foreign minister and presidential aspirant of the country. It eventually led to the tragic end of one of them. Welcome back to Crime and Prison. Enjoy this chilling true story of love triangle turned deadly in one of the homes of Raphael Tuju, a presidential candidate in Kenya in this pathetic episode. Explore the audacity of a Kenyan General Security Unit officer whose brazen display of his illicit affair with his boss's wife ended in tragedy. Ruth Akinyi and her husband Raphael Tuju got married on November 15, 1986. The church wedding was attended by many and their love for each other was beautiful to behold. They have 3 children, a son and 2 girls. Raphael was a successful journalist, a TV producer, and he was into real estate. Things began to take a more graceful turn as Raphael and Ruth continued to climb the ladder of success. They lived in a 20 million shillings mansion built on 10 acres of land and enjoyed luxury to its fullest. Life couldn't be happier for this family of 5. They traveled abroad on vacation to Germany, the US, and Italy. They were extremely happy. Ruth is a Kenyan social entrepreneur and advocate for women's rights and empowerment. She is known for her work with marginalized communities, focusing on education, health, and economic development. Her initiatives often aim to uplift women and girls. Raphael, her husband, on the other hand, is an influential figure in community development and leadership. He has been involved in various projects that address social issues and promote sustainable development. His work often focuses on creating positive change in local communities through education, health services, and economic empowerment. Both of them had collaborated on several projects and initiatives that seek to address pressing social challenges in Kenya. So, it was not surprising that in 2008 Raphael Tuju was appointed as the special legal advisor to the President of Kenya, President Kibaki, on matters of ethnic relations and media. This position understandably required he had security personnel at his home to protect his family, especially his wife and children. Therefore, a General Service Unit (GSU) officer was deployed to his house for VIP protection to ensure the security and safety of his family. His name was Anthony Oguta. The GSU in Kenya is known for its rigorous training and specialized capabilities. It is a crucial component of Kenya's law enforcement and national security framework. They also handle high-risk operations such as hostage situations and armed confrontations. The GSU expertise was why Raphael Tuju was very comfortable leaving his family under the protection of Anthony. Even though he was younger, he believed in his ability to carry out his duties professionally. The minister's appointment meant he was going to be absent from time to time from home on national assignment, whether to represent the country internationally or locally as the case may be. Well, his frequent absence from home began to tell on Ruth. She became increasingly lonely. Even though she accompanied her husband on social functions, appeared on the covers of magazines with her husband all lovey-dovey, enjoyed the perks that come with the office of her husband, she still longed for more intimacy. Anthony was younger, vibrant, and readily available. She began to fantasize what it would be like to be in a relationship with him, and it gave her sleepless nights. She was rich, very rich, and he was young and lived moderate life with his wife, Esther Okamu, and their son. Because Anthony worked in close proximity to Ruth and spent a significant amount of his time at her gate, something began to happen, and that led to a stronger personal relationship between them. There was an emotional connection that quickly developed, and it was difficult for Anthony to maintain a professional boundary. She began to flirt with him, and he enjoyed it. An affair started, and she relished the fact that Anthony found her appealing despite the age difference. So, he went from manning the gate as the GSU officer to warming her bed as her lover. Anthony began to enjoy the allure of the financial security that dating this older, wealthy woman provided. He in turn provided her emotional support and companionship and a sense of youthfulness that she didn't experience with her husband. In 2011, Raphael decided to contest for presidency. This took him further away from his family and afforded the lovers more time to enjoy their illicit affair. Madame Ruth was so in love she rented a house for her young lover in Ngong. Soon Anthony's wife became suspicious of his continuing absence from home. When she found out there was a full-blown affair between her husband and Ruth, she exposed both of them. Raphael learnt that his wife was adulterous and, in his own words, had become very abusive and disrespectful to an extent of playing her adulterous life even to the knowledge of his children and workers. Despite the humiliation and hurt, he called his wife and Anthony and warned them to stop their escapade. There was no excuse for Madame Ruth's behavior. None at all. Ruth's husband was assertive and warned his wife of the consequences. They agreed to stop, but at this point, both of them had eaten the forbidden fruit and the lust between them was really strong. The main issues here was the fact that the ex-minister was in a position of power and known nationwide. The humiliation was enormous. Anthony was fired from his job. The termination was justifiable because he messed up the very people he was supposed to protect. He became fully dependent on Madame Ruth. They continued to engage in extramarital affairs despite public outrage. Anthony continued to eat the food of the elders without fear. I still don't understand why Madame Ruth didn't just divorce her husband and walk away if she knew she didn't love him anymore. He became so disrespectful and arrogant that he began to visit Ruth at home despite the restraining order issued by the court against him. He was too familiar with the family to the extent he would call Ruth's children to ask them about their mother. It must truly be heartbreaking for the Tuju's daughters to watch the mother of the house behave in such a despicable manner. Unbeknownst to Ruth, Anthony was a ladies' man. He frequented bars and solicited the company of prostitutes regularly. He had multiple partners and added Madame Ruth to his list. However, he had a girl he really liked and paraded as his girlfriend. Anthony had money, a house, and lived lavishly courtesy of Ruth. You see, Crime in Prison. It is a collection of narratives that delve into the world of crime, punishment, and redemption. From tales of daring crimes to accounts of life behind bars, these stories provide a glimpse into the darker aspects of human behavior and the consequences that follow. The best way to support me is by subscribing to the channel, so if you want to see more stories like this, please hit subscribe. Now let's continue. The ex-minister's nephew, who was also a close friend, revealed Anthony had another girlfriend besides Ruth and his wife Esther. His girlfriend became pregnant, but Anthony denied her pregnancy, which was in its first trimester. Madame Ruth knew about the pregnancy and wanted it terminated. She was so unhappy with Anthony she reduced the amount of money she gave him and gave him an ultimatum to cut ties with the girl. I wonder how on earth she believed she was the only side chick he had. At one point in Anthony's relationship with Esther, his wife, Madame Ruth even volunteered to support her financially, perhaps so she could stop complaining about his infidelity. Raphael Tuju finally decided to divorce his wife of many years, but before the divorce was finalized, Anthony visited Raphael's house again on the 20th of May 2013 on Ruth's invitation. Ruth's invitation portrayed her husband as a weak dog who was all bark and no bite. Without giving it a second thought, Anthony decided to visit the Tuju's home. The security guards at Raphael's house hinted that Anthony was in his home again. Anthony was surrounded by the ex-minister and his security operatives who beat him up and handed over again to the police. Anthony argued he didn't violate his restraining order because he was invited to the house by Ruth herself. However, he was charged with trespassing. Madame Ruth bailed him out after spending a night in the cell. This was an outrageous situation. Anthony either had no one who really loved him enough to tell him he was going down the path of destruction, or he had reached the point of no return. This is truly heartbreaking. Ruth used him for her own selfish gain, but he also benefited immensely from her financially. Was he manipulated or just plain stupid and undiscerning? Despite the restraining order against Anthony, he continued with his open adultery with Ruth. Isn't it true that a fly that is destined to die will follow a corpse to its grave? Finally, Raphael's request for divorce on the grounds of infidelity was granted and they went their separate ways. There's a limit to the extent a person can tolerate infidelity before they finally take a bold step. He promised to pay her medical bills and a monthly allowance of not more than 200,000 shillings because he figured if it was more than that she was going to splurge it on her lover. Ruth and Anthony enjoyed a certain level of notoriety, especially Anthony's audacity to enter and exit the Tuju's home at will. They were the indefatigable duo, the undefeatable lovers. Ruth's boldness to invite her lover into her matrimonial home despite several caution from her husband and her children as witnesses to her lack of respect, her fall from grace was very swift. Her public display of disrespect for her husband and children, including the sanctity of a holy matrimony she swore an oath to uphold, tarnished her image. She is now that proverbial woman and a cautionary tale of how unchecked lustful passion and infidelity can lead to one's downfall. So, this woman traded her 27-year-old marriage, 3 adult children and a supportive husband for a young gigolo. Their weird, cancerous whirlwind romance ended abruptly. Proverbs chapter 5 verses 3 to 5 says, "For the lips of the adulterous woman drips honey, and her speech is smoother than oil, but in the end she is bitter than gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps lead straight to the grave." Anthony's life took a tragic turn when he was found deceased with a blunt force trauma to his head in one of the houses owned by the Tujus on the 2nd of July 2013. This story is even more bizarre as Ruth's son, Mano Tuju, was 2 years older than Anthony, his mother's lover. It is even more outrageous that Mano Tuju was said to have been with Anthony and other friends weeks before he was found deceased. Were they friends? Why would he be friends with someone who tore his family apart? Even more appalling was the fact Raphael's nephew was with Anthony on the night he went out drinking. By the following morning he was found deceased. It was also gathered during interrogation that Anthony was involved with several other women that even Ruth was aware of. He lost his life as a result of brain hemorrhage and blunt force trauma to his head. Raphael was in faraway Johannesburg in South Africa when the incidents occurred. It is hilariously and savagely funny to see Ruth Akinyi now selling food by the roadside of Mombasa many years after her husband divorced her. Karma, they say, comes to you when you least expect it. The once flamboyant woman who carried on with an strange affair in defiance to her husband's feeling and status in the society is really now just kowtowing in submission to few shillings she gets from her customers at the roadside of Mombasa. She wakes up as early as possible in the morning and gets to her stall at the roadside to make her chapati, matumbo, fish, liver, beef stew and rice. One would assume that while she was on the laps of luxury, she would be wise enough to engage in a meaningful business that would fetch her some money as the wife of an influential politician. But no, she spent all her money on a sorry excuse of a husband of another woman who she led to the path of no return. While she sat in front of a charcoal stove, Raphael Tuju opened an exquisite restaurant in Karen called Dari Restaurant. He continues to live in his mansion with his 2 daughters and enjoys his freedom from an adulterous woman. If you liked our hard work, then please like and share this video so that others can also know about this story and now be alert from now onwards. If you have not subscribed to the channel, then do it quickly. Subscribe the channel with bell icon. See you in the next video. Thank you.